So in this video, I'm going to give you guys 5 life-changing principles, thoughts, and advice on money that I have gotten from the Psychology of Money book and that have drastically changed the way that I look and think about money. And I think it's going to really help me and help you guys make more money and keep more money throughout the entirety of your investing or business career. So the first piece of advice that I have really taken from this is that a very small percentage of the actions or things that you do will account for a large percentage of the gains that you guys make. Now, in simple terms, it sounds like the 80-20 rule. We all know that 20% of our actions account for 80% of our results in a lot of different areas. But I think this is a lot more serious and a lot more drastic than that. I think 5% of your actions can account for 95% of the money that you make, even going as far as 1% of the things that you invest in, the things that you do in business are going to account for 99% of the results that you get. But I think it goes a little bit deeper because it changes the way that you look at investing and look at business. The first thing is, usually in life, right, we always want to be right. We don't want to have losers. We don't want to fail at certain things, but in business and investing, that's completely the way it is, right? It just, you can't go around it. But I think when you know this, you really accept it to a much higher degree. I can try 20 different things in business, but only one of them work and be completely set, right? I can try 20 different marketing campaigns, none of them work. But if I try one, and I know that if I have one really good one that works, everything is going to take off, and it's going to account for all of that time and money that I spent trying to figure it out. So if you're just trying to do the perfect ones and not get it wrong, you might only do 3. So you don't give yourself enough time to get to that point where the very singular one can really outlast all the other ones and give you the results that you're looking for. Same thing in terms of investing. You can invest in 10 different things. 9 of them don't work, but one of them completely pays for all of the losses you had on that, plus being able to completely take care of you. So in finance and business, you really only need to be right a handful of times, right? Think about people who invested in Tesla very early on, who invested in Bitcoin very early on, Microsoft, Google. You could have invested in 100 different things. But if you just invested in Amazon at a certain price or just invested in Bitcoin when it was $100, you're set for life, right? That one thing that you invested in completely paid for everything and you never have to worry again. So it's very important to keep that in mind in terms of, oh, I had a loss, right? This trade didn't go right, or this investment didn't work out, but it's constantly looking for the one that is going to really work out and it is really going to pay for everything. So you don't need to be right most of the time. You don't even need to be right half the time. You really can only be right a couple of times. But the second point, which is the most important one following up to that, is you need to be able to stay in the game, right? You're going to have these tail events that are going to really give you a large percentage of your results. But if you get taken out of the game, aka bankruptcy, you lose all your money, you can't keep investing, then you basically lost the game. So the name of the game is staying in the game. So you need to take into account the risk factor of all of these, right? So maybe the things that are going to lead to the biggest results may only have a 5% chance, 10% chance of working out. But you need to account for that risk and make sure that it doesn't wipe you out, right? So say you were back in the day wanting to invest in Bitcoin, you really believed in it, but you didn't know when it was going to take off, right? So you invested all the money that you had, and then you get to a certain point in your personal life and you have to pull that money out. Now, you just missed out on that opportunity because you got taken out of the game because you couldn't afford to keep playing the game. So you need to take into consideration, okay, what is the risk on this? What is the risk on that? And make sure that nothing can take you out of the game. The name of the game is to continue playing the game. And if you're playing the game long enough, you are going to have these investment opportunities, these things that work in business that give you the tail events that allow you to have that one winner, that second winner, or even just one big thing that really catapults your career, your investing career, your business career. But if you get taken out of the game, if you don't have money to keep playing because you bet all your chips on one thing and it didn't work out, then you're screwed, right? So you always have to plan for the plan to not work. You have to calculate your risk and you have to make sure that nothing can completely wipe you out. So the third point, which I think is extremely important following up to the second point, is things that have never happened before happen all the time. So there's things that are going to come up that are drastically going to change the investing landscape, right? Certain things that you may invested in may be completely wiped out. Some things that may seem irrelevant are going to go to the fucking moon, right? And there's certain things that are going to happen across the world. It could be world war, could be the US dollar being completely irrelevant in 50 years. You have no idea what's going to happen. There's things that you don't even think are going to happen or even think is a possibility that are going to happen that are going to completely change the way the world operates. So when people think about investing, they're like, all right, if I just invest in the S&P 500 for the next 50 years, by the time I'm 65, I'll have $10 million. That's great. but you're only relying on past to predict your future outcomes. And that's not always how it works. Yes, that may have how it worked the last 100 years, but have you calculated or thought about the fact that the S&P 500 may not be here in 50 years. The US dollar may not be here in 50 years. We may have hyperinflation. We may have a nuclear war that basically destroys the US as we know it. So if you're banking on past events to continue happening in the future and not calculating for things that have never happened before, like the US dollar losing its power, the US not being a military power in 50 years, right? These things have never happened, but they will probably happen eventually. We just don't know when. So if you're constantly looking at your investing strategy and the things that you're going to do based on the past, you are going to be brutally mistaken and you are going to be hit hard. So you always need to plan for the things that you're planning for not to work, but also plan for things that you can't even prepare for that are going to happen. No one could have ever prepared for a COVID pandemic, right? No one was expecting that to happen. That hasn't happened in our lifetime. So no one's planning for it. But the people that were able to take advantage of it because they understood there's going to be things that I'm not going to be able to prepare or predict that are going to happen. They had cash on the sidelines. They're a little bit paranoid. So they're expecting things like this to happen. And when it did, they invested into things at the right time. They invested into the right things at the very bottom. And guess what? When it took off, they're fucking set for life. So that's falling back up to that first point. The people who took advantage of the COVID pandemic for 1 year, had a lot of cash invested into a shit ton of real estate. Maybe they threw a lot of money into Bitcoin. They could be set for life because they were right one time during 1 year of your 100-year lifespan. If you really fucking kill it, you could be good for the whole rest of your life. So there's so many important points in just that point alone. Again, plan for the plan to not work. The things that you think are going to happen just based on the past might not happen. Prepare for things that you may never think is going to happen to happen. So the fourth tip, which I think is really, really valuable, is be careful who you take financial advice from two perspectives. Number one, only take financial advice from people that you would want to be in their position. So don't take financial advice from someone who's fucking broke, first off. Don't take financial advice from, say, maybe a teacher who makes $50,000 a year and is worth $200,000, right? But also don't take advice from people who don't know you and don't know your goals and how you want to get there. Right, so again, maybe you're talking to a billionaire and they're like, hey, this is my financial advice, but they're giving you financial advice from the perspective of trying to become a billionaire. Maybe you don't want to do that. So why would you take that advice? It's going to be completely different. And the journey to get there, you may not be happy with, right? So it may not fit your goals or how you want to get there. So you need to make sure that you don't take anything at face value, obviously. Just because someone says something doesn't mean that that's what you should do. They're just giving you perspective and advice based on their life, their goals, and the way that they've gotten there, right? So it may not always line up. So just don't take it at face value. And again, they may not know your goals or where you want to get to and how you want to get there. You may not be able to deal with the kind of stress that they dealt with to get to where they're at. So maybe you want to take a little bit easier route, or maybe you're taking advice from someone who's worth $3 million and all they've done is invest into the S&P 500, and that's just not how you want to get there. You want to maybe far exceed that, or you want to do it in a different way. So make sure you're taking advice from people that you actually look up to and want to be in their position, and you're taking financial advice and understanding it from the perspective that they understand your goals, they understand who you are and where you want to go. So the fifth one is really just be aware of your own confirmation bias and your own psychology around making money, right? You may invest into something, and because you invested in it, you only pay attention to the good things that people are saying about it. So that way you constantly believe, okay, it's going to work, it's going to work. But you're not looking at the things and the reasons why it might not work, right? So you always need to be aware of this in your own thought process when it goes into investing into anything. And then obviously you think, okay, I've looked at all the news. I think this is going to really work out. Risk is what's left over after you've already calculated everything. So even though you believe 100% it's going to work out, there's still a risk that it won't, right? There's going to be black swans. There's going to be things that never happened before that are going to happen that can completely change the game. So again, getting back even to that second point, just because you really believe in something doesn't mean it's 100% going to work out. At the end of the day, it's still a percentage of it working out. It's still a risk. So don't bet the farm on just that one thing because you believe so much. You're reading all the news. Everything looks good on paper. But again, if you bet everything on that and a black swan event happens and you get wiped out, now you're no longer in the game. You can't continue to play the game long enough for everything to really work out in your favor. So you need to be aware of your own psychology, your own confirmation bias, and always stay a little bit paranoid